Today we're going to be checking out the dual cab simulator from Digitech. This is a stereo 2-channel cab simulator called the CabDryVR. Now I'm going to give a overall review of this pedal, but also compare it to my cab simulator from the Simplifer, which is all analog. I tend to always gravitate towards analog gear, but I know that in the cab simulator domain, digital seems to reign supreme. So, in this video, I'm going to be answering the question, is analog always better? Before I dive into the sounds of this pedal, which if you don't want to hear me talk, you could just skip right up here. But I would like to talk about my main complaint with this pedal, which might totally be a deal breaker for you, and you might not even consider it, and you won't even have to watch the rest of this video. I'm doing it for you. So my main complaint about this pedal is that it only works on an external single power supply. I cannot get it to work with both of the pedal supply units. I've actually tested it with 3 different pedal power supply units, all of different tiers and qualities, all with different voltages and milliamp supply, because I thought it took more juice than it was advertised for. So right now I'm running it on a 9-volt TC Electronics power supply at 670 milliamps. And that seems to be the only way I can get this pedal to work properly. I've tested it with this great isolated power supply here on 9 volts, 12 volts, 15 volts, 18 volts, and ranging from 150 milliamps all the way up to 350 milliamps. And I believe one of them I had was 500 milliamps, and that still did not work. And when I say it doesn't work, what I mean is it will completely cut out. And I'll try and add a sound sample here so you can hear it. Like it's starving for voltage, and that it is a power issue. If you know about this ahead of time, it's not a big deal, but this pedal, like a lot of pedals on the market, do not come with a power supply. So you're kind of scrambling, trying to figure out what voltage and milliamps to use with this thing. I've had many pedals throughout my life, and I've never had that issue before. I always seem to be able to figure out what voltage and milliamps to use. On rare occasions, there's been a couple times where I've had to use more milliamps than was advertised, but I've never had to completely only use a standalone power supply. Ironically, the other pedal I've had issues with the milliamps was a Digitech pedal. So that makes me feel like it's a design flaw and not just this one unit, but I could be wrong. If you've used this pedal with a power supply daisy chain of some sort, please let me know in the comments, because I'd be curious if anyone's got that to work before. But if that's a deal breaker, if you're planning to put this on a pedal board like I have right here, where I'm running my looper, this Fuzz, and my Simplifer off this power supply here, no problem. But I have this separate power supply going to just the cab driver because it won't work on here, and like I said, any other power supply unit I have used. And then one other thing I would like to mention, I know people prefer digital cab simulators because they like to load in their own IRs, and you cannot do that with this pedal. That doesn't matter to me. The reason I'm buying a pedal is so that I don't have to dive through menus and do a bunch of updates and downloads. I prefer, that might be why I like analog, but that is not an issue for me, but that could be an issue for you. So that's another thing to keep in mind. But while we're on that topic, let's go through the features that this pedal does have. So you have your on and off switch here. One toggle here for guitar and bass. I have it set to guitar today because that's what we're going to be listening to, but it does work for bass. There's not much knobs going on, which is great, but it's even simpler than you think because these two are just duplicates. If you're only using it in mono, you only need to use these two knobs, right? Or vice versa. Now, the only thing is this knob here has a secondary knob here, if you can see that. So you have this top part and then the bottom part. So it's kind of like three knobs. Yeah, it is three knobs. So let's go through what those three knobs are, and then we can just duplicate them here. There are slight differences from the top and bottom, so we could talk about that in a sec. But first things first is this bottom ring here is your level. All right, so I'm gonna I've already checked my levels, so I'm gonna leave that center at noon for the duration of that video, so we will no longer worry about that. And then this top part here, they call it the size knob. I guess it's trying to make it sound like the speaker's bigger or smaller, but basically, for those audio engineers out there, all this is a low pass filter. So really, when it's all the way up, you could almost think of this as your tone knob on your guitar. When it's all the way up, you are just letting your signal go through full frequency spectrum, right? Or whatever the frequency signal you're sending through, right? And as you go down, you are cutting off the high frequencies, right? We will listen to that in a sec. But real quick, before we start, the last part here is these are the cabs over here. 6 cabs on the bottom and 7 cabs on top. And that's the only difference between the top and bottom here. So the cab B for the second channel, instead of a 7th cab, you have this dry all the way at the bottom here. And basically that is bypassing the cabinet. So if you wanted to, you could have one signal sent through with a speaker simulation, and then the B output could be set to dry, and you can send that to your amp. That allows you to maybe send one to front of house or a mixing board that is direct and has that cabinet simulator filter on it, and then the other one be sent to your actual real amp, which is great that they have that. That's an awesome feature. And that pretty much covers the entire pedal. The only other thing to note is the LED here. When you switch it here, that's bass, that's guitar. And as you send signal through, if your signal's a little too hot, it will turn red. It doesn't clip. It just lets you know that, hey, it's getting a little overdriven. And that's another issue I've had with this pedal, where it's very sensitive to the type of signal that you're sending. So you kind of have to work with it a little bit here. So let's go ahead, and I got my looper set up. I've already recorded 2 loops, one of them a rhythm pickup of my Les Paul, and then a more aggressive sound, more rock and roll on the treble pickup and doing power chords. Only other thing here is I do have my super badass Variac Fuzz that I will be using. If you want to listen to that more, I have a full video review on that pedal that I'll leave up here and in the description. And then lastly, we are going through the simplifier, and that is going to be our preamplifier, because most likely if you're using this pedal, you're kind of thinking about a direct rig, right? So that's why I chose to use the simplifier here. Mostly what I'll be using, I'm going to leave everything at noon, not mess with the preamp too much. But how I also have this set up is I have the send out going into the cab, bypassing the cab simulator of the simplifier, and then we're just going to hear the cab going to Ableton Live. All right, let's just listen to how this sounds without a cab simulator, and we'll see how desperately we need one. Here we go. much better. You could hear a lot of that fizziness go away that a guitar cabinet and speaker would roll off. So that's nice. Let's hear how these filters sound, and I'll show you how it is just a low pass filter, and we can kind of sweep through the frequencies here. Let's go through the cabinets here. We'll go through the first one here, have them both on one. And I have both of these panned left and right, so we can hear it in stereo, because that's one of the great features of this pedal, is being able to run it in stereo, especially if you're going to have it at the end of your pedal board. You might have some reverb and delay that you want to have in stereo, so this allows you to keep that, and it also allows you to change the cab from left to right. right, now let's do the last. So we're on the last cab here, that's 7. This one doesn't have 7, but it has a dry. So let's just hear how that would sound without only one cab on one side. And if we put our filter all the way up, you can kind of hear that nasty, kind of hear that. Oh, actually it doesn't sound. Kind of get rid of those high frequencies a little bit here. By the way, the only effect I have after this is I do have a room reverb in Ableton just to give it some room, right? None of these pedals have that, have a room reverb, which without it, it sounds very dry and stale. So that's the only effect. No other processing is being done. All right, let's try a little more aggressive power chords here. Lowering that filter definitely helps a lot with the more aggressive distortion. Now it sounds better without it clipping, but again, like I said, it's very hard, as you can see how low the volume is, to not clip this pedal. As we could see there, I adjusted the level, and it's actually the letting you know that it's clipping on the way out, because as you could see, unless it's some kind of like preamp gain, the clipping on the way out is causing it to turn red. Quite a bit of flexibility here to really tweak. I like that. now what I'm going to do in order to properly compare these two, I'm going to just, out of these two loops, I'm going to find the best, what I think is the best tone for each of these sounds. And then we're going to do the same thing with the analog and see how they compare. Alright, I think that's the one. Let's let it loop a little bit. Alright, now let's see how it sounds. I'm going to go back to Fender here. See how it sounds with the cleaner style guitar. Let's put a little fuzz just to see. I like that. Let's see what else we could do here. Ooh. I think that feels a little more present to me. It's between... like them both on the same cab with just slight EQ tweaks. We'll let it loop. Alright, let's do the same thing, but with the analog cab. Also, if you want to hear these dry without the room reverb, let me leave a comment and I will make a short post with the dry sounds. So yeah, let's hear how it sounds going through the analog cab sim. Now I have a full video on this I'll leave up here if you want to check out more, but basically we have a lot less options here, but still a decent amount. We have the cab size, 1x12, 4x12, 2x12, and then similar situation where we have kind of like a high frequency roll off. And this is the power section. I've left this the whole time because that actually will get sent out too. So we're gonna leave that. We're just gonna focus on these two switches and knobs here. And really, this is kind of the sweet spot here. Personally, I think the 4x12 sounds the best, so we're gonna leave those at 4x12. Maybe put one at 2x12 to just give it a little more dimension like the other one was providing us. I don't know. I feel like this is the way to go. Just doesn't need a big, wide stereo separation. A lot less options, but hey, I think we got a great sound, super quick and easy. All right, let's see how our more aggressive rock tone sounds. Leave it the same as well, just maybe slightly more roll off since we got a lot more higher frequencies from the harmonic distortion. Let's throw fuzz in here. That's it. All right. Well, I thought that sounded great too. I was actually expecting the Digitech to perform worse than it did, because to be honest, I haven't been super happy with the pedal. I've had it for quite a while and it does not get used much because I felt like it was missing something. And then when I got the Simplifier, which I got afterwards, I felt like it had everything I need. One thing to note about analog versus digital is there's no latency. Obviously, when you're going through a DAW, there's going to be some latency based on your audio interface. But when you're plugging straight into the your pedal board, you're going to have zero latency with an analog setup versus a digital setup, which really helps with the feel. So maybe you like the sound better of one, but until you play it in person, there is that feel aspect that you're missing and you're not going to be able to compare until you actually have them both in person. So that's something to keep in mind as well. But overall, I think they are both fantastic options. If you want the wide variety of different cabinets and enjoy tweaking, this might be the one for you. If you want something a little bit more basic that kind of just gets you where you need to be as quickly as possible, you might want to go for an analog cab simulator just because they are a little bit more simple, direct, and less hassle. But those are my thoughts. Let me hear what you think in the comments section below. If you would like to learn more about these pedals, please subscribe for future videos. Hope to see you in the next one.